They say you don't notice the moment your life changes until it's standing right in front of you, wearing your clothes and drinking your coffee. For me, it was a Tuesday morning. Not a dramatic day, not stormy, no eerie violin music. Just me, a man named Jack Hollis, 42, mildly graying at the temples, and 5 minutes late for work. I was brushing my teeth in the mirror, watching the foam gather at the corners of my mouth like an old man mumbling secrets. Then I looked myself in the eyes. Really looked. Something was off. Not in the mirror. In me. I used to be the guy who smiled at strangers, brought my wife coffee in bed on Saturdays, grilled steaks like they were performance art. But somewhere between the mortgage and the Monday meetings, I'd become quiet, hesitant, a man who asked before he laughed. My wife, Marcy, used to call me her storm. Not because I was angry, but because when I walked into a room, everything moved. Lately, I felt more like a breeze people didn't notice unless it knocked over their latte. That morning, she wasn't in bed when I woke up. Nothing new. Lately, her side of the mattress was cold more often than not. She said she had an early yoga class. Again. Which was interesting, considering we don't live near a yoga studio, and I hadn't seen her mad in months. But like I said, this is part 1. So I didn't know anything yet. She came home that evening wearing workout clothes she hadn't actually worked out in. Her eyeliner was still perfect. Her perfume still fresh. I kissed her on the cheek. She flinched like it tickled. How was yoga? I asked casually, folding a napkin at the dinner table. She blinked. Oh, good. Intense. She said it like someone describing a movie they half-watched while scrolling through Instagram. We ate in silence. She scrolled. I chewed. She smiled at something on her phone. I stared at the meatloaf like it might reveal the truth if I just stabbed it enough times. You good? I asked finally. Marcy glanced up, blinked like I'd interrupted a thought. Yeah. Why? No reason, I said, then changed the subject to something safe. The neighbors. Politics. The thermostat. Anything but the widening gap between us. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I watched the way her back faced me, like a door half shut. Something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Yet, the next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened her laptop. Now before you peg me as paranoid, let's be clear, this wasn't some late-night, flashlight under the blanket operation. I wasn't trying to be a spy. But I was looking for our tax return documents, and Marcy had handled that stuff ever since she decided I file like a raccoon. Her words. The laptop was on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. Innocent. Taunting. And like fate giving me just enough rope to tie a very complicated emotional noose, her email was open. I didn't plan to look. Really. But right there, top of the inbox, was a name I didn't recognize. Griffin. Griffin? Not a coworker. Not a friend. Not even one of those shady names like Aunt Becky that kids use when they're sneaking around. The subject line? Last night was incredible. My stomach did a casual backflip. A sort of Olympic event performed by a man who just realized his wife might not be doing downward dog with the girls. I clicked. Griffin. Still thinking about that laugh of yours. God, the way you looked in the elevator, pure trouble. Counting the hours until Friday. Marcy. Behave. You're going to get me caught. I can't stop smiling either. I'll book the room. Same place? I stared at the screen long enough for the coffee to go cold in my hand. Same place. Book the room. Elevator. It didn't say exactly what happened. No photos, no smoking gun emoji. But come on. The subtext was louder than a drum solo in a cathedral. Marcy was cheating. I didn't react like I thought I would. There was no rage. No screaming. Just this weird calm that settled into my chest like fog. I closed the laptop, picked up my keys, and went for a drive. No destination. Just movement. I passed our favorite diner. The one we used to go to on Sundays before everything got complicated. Before Griffin. Her betrayal wasn't confirmed yet. Not on paper. But in my gut, it was signed, sealed, and being delivered straight to the center of my marriage like a ticking box of regret. Later that night, I laid next to her in bed. She was scrolling through her phone, smiling softly. Not at me. Just smiling. I asked, "Do you love me?" She paused, surprised. "Of course I do. Why would you ask that?" "No reason," I said. And I meant it. Because I wasn't looking for an answer. I already knew. Friday. Funny how that day used to mean pizza night and a movie. Now, it meant something else. According to Griffin's email, it was their night. So I took the day off. Called in sick. Which wasn't a total lie. My heart had been playing hopscotch in my chest since Tuesday, and my appetite had dropped off a cliff, but I wasn't about to sit around and spiral. I had a plan. Step 1. Follow her. Now, I've never been the jealous type. I don't check phones. I don't sniff clothes. I never once tried to catch her in anything. But today wasn't about suspicion. That part had already expired. This was about proof. About finally knowing if I was mourning a betrayal or just burying my own insecurity. She left at 4:12 p.m., dressed casual but polished. Jeans, black boots, and that burgundy sweater she usually reserved for holidays or events where she'd be photographed. I followed at a safe distance, nothing dramatic, just your friendly neighborhood husband, cruising a few car lengths back like a man on the edge of the truth. She pulled into the parking garage of the Larchwood Hotel, downtown. Not a spa, not a yoga studio. A business-class hotel tucked between a steakhouse and a flower shop. Classy, but not memorable. Discreet. She parked. I watched from across the street, behind the smoked windows of my car. And then he showed up. Tall, well-dressed, hair slicked back like he moisturizes with arrogance. He didn't kiss her, he grabbed her hand. Confident. Familiar. The kind of touch that said, "We've done this before." They walked inside. No hesitation. No looking over their shoulders. So that was it. Not a suspicion. Not a misunderstanding. Reality. Cold, crystal clear, and unfolding right in front of me like a twisted documentary. I didn't follow them in. I didn't need to. I sat there in my car for an hour, staring at the hotel sign, my breath fogging the window. No tears. No shaking hands. Just the sharp, vibrating silence in my chest. My phone buzzed. Marcy. Sorry I'm late. Yoga ran over. Grabbing dinner with Emily. Be home a little late. Love you. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. She was still lying. Still smiling through it. Still thinking I was the same man from last week, the one who made her coffee and didn't ask questions. But that man? He was gone. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove. No destination, no music, just the hum of the tires and the tick of the blinker whenever I decided to pretend I had direction. My hand stayed at 10 and 2, but my thoughts were all over the map. You'd think betrayal would set off fireworks, rage, heartbreak, screaming matches and parking lots. But no, what I felt was colder, quieter. Like someone had turned the volume down on my entire world and left me sitting in the static. By the time I got home, it was nearly 10 p.m. Marcy was already there. In sweatpants. Hair in a ponytail. Barefoot in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of white wine like she'd just returned from a hard-earned spin class and not wherever she actually was. Hey babe, she said, not looking up. Sorry I didn't text more. Dinner with Emily turned into a bit of a vent session. She's going through it with Kyle again. I nodded slowly, slipping off my jacket. Emily. Right. Good OL, scapegoat Emily, doing the heavy lifting for an affair she didn't know she was part of. How's she doing? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Marcy shrugged, leaning against the counter. Same old. Kyle's moody. She's exhausted. You know how it is. Oh, I knew. I knew Kyle had been in Tampa for a week on a work retreat. I knew because I talked to him yesterday. He'd sent me a picture of the hotel gym and a beer named Florida Man. Not exactly the vibe of a guy caught in a domestic soap opera, but I didn't call her out. Not yet. Instead, I kissed her on the forehead and said, "You look tired." She smiled and took a long sip of wine. I am. Yoga and drama. The usual. We went to bed like we always did. She curled away from me, and I stared at the ceiling. The next morning, I called my friend Derek. Derek is the kind of guy you want in your corner when things go sideways. He's not dramatic. He doesn't feed the flames. He listens first. Then, when the time comes, he quietly helps you build the fire. When he answered, his voice was groggy. Jack? Everything okay? Not really, I said. I need a favor. And coffee. Lots of it. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at a small corner cafe 2 towns over, one Marcy would never step foot in because the espresso machine made a weird noise. I laid it all out for Derek. The emails. The hotel. Griffin. When I finished, he sat back in his chair, nodding slowly. Well, he said, that explains why she started calling you honey again. Guilt always comes with a pet name. I'm not sure what to do yet, I admitted. But I know I can't just let it slide. Of course not, he said. So what's your endgame? Divorce? Confrontation? Public shaming at Thanksgiving? Not yet. I want her to feel it first. I want her to sit in it. Soak in it. I want her to know I know, without telling her. Derek smirked. Ah, the slow burn. I nodded. Exactly. He leaned forward. So what do you need from me? I need help making her nervous. I want her to think the walls are closing in, but not from me. I want her to trip over her own lies. Paranoia is a beautiful thing when it starts whispering in the wrong person's ear. He smiled. Jack Hollis, you magnificent iceberg. All right, I'm in. What's the plan? I laid it out in small pieces. Subtle things. A blocked call here. A forwarded email there. A note slipped into her purse with just the word soon scrawled on it in Sharpie. We build pressure, bit by bit, until she couldn't stand up straight without feeling like someone was watching her. Because someone would be. Me. And Derek. And the truth. That evening, I came home with flowers. She blinked in surprise. Wow, what's this for? Just thinking about you, I said with a smile. She laughed nervously. Well, thank you. You don't usually do flowers on a Monday. Guess I'm full of surprises. I watched her carefully as she read the card. It just said, it's never too late to come clean. I saw it, the moment her stomach dropped. Just a flicker in her eyes. But it was enough. She looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong. This is sweet. Oh, I'm glad you think so, I said, walking past her to grab a drink. Marcy didn't mention the card again. But later, while she was brushing her teeth, I saw her phone light up. She tilted the screen just enough to hide it. That was the first time. Over the next few days, we'd up the game. Slightly rearranged drawers. Griffin's number blocked twice. A whisper from a fake profile on Instagram. Derek played the part like a pro. Her lies started tripping over themselves. And me? I smiled through it all. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need a scream or a slap. Sometimes, all it needs is silence. And patience. By Thursday, the tension in the house was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Marcy wasn't sleeping well. I could tell because she'd started waking up before her alarm and lying perfectly still, like if she didn't move, maybe the universe wouldn't notice her. Every time her phone buzzed, her whole body flinched. She'd check it fast, thumb twitching over the screen, scanning like someone afraid of what might appear. Which made me wonder, how many lies does it take to turn a person into a jumpy ghost in their own home? Apparently, not as many as you'd think. I kept the act going. Brought her coffee in the morning. Kissed her cheek when I left for work. Came home with dinner. Polished. Steady. Unbothered. But I started asking subtle questions. Harmless on the surface. Landmines underneath. Did Emily ever finish that patio project she mentioned? Did you say yoga moved to Friday nights now? Hey, what was the name of that guy you used to work with, Greg? Gary. She'd fumble her way through answers, eyes narrowing just slightly, the gears turning too hard behind the calm smile. Oh, right. Yeah. Greg, he moved out of state, I think. Sure he did. On Friday, I left a note in her coat pocket. Simple. Just said, you missed a spot. No name. No context. She found it when she got to work. I know this because I was on the other end of a call from Derek an hour later. She just called Griffin from the office bathroom. Whispering like she was being hunted, he said, trying not to laugh. Told him, we have to be more careful. I think he knows. I smiled. She's starting to sweat. You want me to keep it going? Turn it up. The second email came later that afternoon. Anonymous. Blank sender. Just one sentence. Larchwood. Room 608. Your little secret isn't one anymore. No photos. No threats. Just a truth shaped like a knife. That night at dinner, she barely ate. You okay? I asked, watching her stab a green bean like it owed her money. HM? Yeah. Just long week. I nodded sympathetically. You know, if there's something on your mind, you can tell me. She looked up, blinked, swallowed. Why would you say that? I shrugged. You've been distant. Like something's weighing on you. Figured I'd ask. Her fingers gripped the fork tighter. No, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. That word. Fine. It should be put in a museum with a plaque underneath that says, used exclusively to avoid the truth. She stood up. I think I'll take a bath. Good idea, I said, sipping my wine. Once she disappeared upstairs, I went to the hallway closet and opened the small, square safe tucked behind the coats. Inside were three things: a burner phone, a flash drive, and a printed copy of our joint bank account, with her little hotel transactions highlighted in yellow. I wasn't planning to confront her. Not yet. Because here's the thing. Cheaters hate two things more than getting caught. Being ignored. Not knowing how much you know. So I let her keep spinning. I gave her silence and smiles and notes that meant nothing and everything. And she unraveled in slow motion. Saturday morning, she called Emily. I heard her whispering from the bedroom, voice low, frantic. No, he hasn't said anything. But something's off. He's being nice. Too nice. Like he's pretending. A pause. Yes, I checked the laptop. No signs of anything. But my code had a note in it yesterday. Another pause. No, not a love note. It said, "You missed a spot." That's not cute, Em. That's targeted. I almost laughed. She was spiraling. And she still hadn't figured out how fast the water was rising around her. Later that day, we went grocery shopping together. I tossed things in the cart like nothing was wrong, asking for her opinion on cereals and frozen pizza. At one point, while we were walking past the flower aisle, I casually said, "You ever been in room 608 at the Larchwood?" She dropped the can of soup she was holding. Clang. Rolled under the cart. I bent down and picked it up. "You okay?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "No idea what you're talking about," she said a little too fast. I nodded. Must have been someone else then. Strange. Just sounded familiar. And then I walked on. Left her there, standing in front of the canned corn, her brain tying itself into knots. Because now she knew I knew. Or at least she thought I did. But I didn't need to reveal my hand yet. Let her carry the weight. Let her paranoia do the hard part. Because when someone starts lying, the truth stops being the threat. They become their own worst enemy. By Sunday night, she finally cracked. We were watching a movie. She was barely paying attention. Her wine glass was full, untouched. Then she said it. Softly. Like she wasn't sure she was speaking aloud. "Jack, is there something you want to ask me?" I turned slowly toward her. "No." "Why?" She bit her lip. "You've been acting different." I raised an eyebrow. "Have I?" She nodded. "Like you know something." I leaned back. "And if I did?" Silence. She looked down at her hands. "How long have you known?" Now we were in it. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood up, walked to the hallway, pulled the flash drive from the safe, and placed it on the coffee table in front of her. "Long enough," I said. And then I went upstairs, leaving her alone with everything she'd tried to bury. Tomorrow, we'd talk. But tonight? Tonight was hers. And it was going to be the longest one of her life. Morning came like judgment. I heard her moving around downstairs, pacing, pausing, opening drawers she never opened, probably wondering if I'd left more little breadcrumbs lying around. The flash drive still sat untouched on the coffee table. Funny how the truth, when it's packaged neatly in a plastic shell, suddenly becomes radioactive. I stayed upstairs for a while. Let her stew. Let the air get heavier. The longer I waited, the more she'd imagine. Sometimes silence makes a louder entrance than words ever could. Eventually, I walked into the kitchen. She was sitting at the island, a mug of untouched coffee in front of her. Hair down, makeup smudged from last night's anxiety nap, or maybe just from finally facing herself in a mirror. Her voice was hoarse. "Can we talk?" I didn't sit. "Sure. Go ahead." She looked up at me like a student called to the front of the class without studying. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she tried to hide it by gripping the mug tighter. "I don't know what you found, or how, but I'm not going to lie anymore." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "That'd be a nice change." She flinched like the words physically hit her. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did. I let that hang in the air for a moment. That's the kind of thing people say when they knock over a lamp, Marcy. Not when they destroy a marriage. She swallowed. "I didn't destroy it. We were drifting for a long time. You barely notice me anymore." I laughed. "Just once." Sharp. "You think that gives you a hall pass?" "No. I'm just trying to explain." "No," I said, cutting her off. "What you're doing is justifying. Explaining would have happened 6 months ago, when the lies started. When the receipts showed up. When you told me you were with Emily." She didn't respond. Because she couldn't. Because there's no polite way to say, "I was sleeping with someone else while you were picking up dinner and still calling me beautiful." "Who is he?" I asked. Her eyes flicked down. "Griffin. He's nobody, really." I nodded. "Nobody? Who you met at a hotel?" "Multiple times." Her eyes welled up, but I didn't move. Tears are only currency when they haven't already been spent lying. "Was it love?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "No, I don't think so. It wasn't about that." "What was it about?" She hesitated. "Control. I felt invisible. Boring. With Griffin, I felt wanted. Desired." I looked at her carefully, quietly. "And you didn't think to tell your husband you felt that way?" You just went straight to the betrayal part. I was afraid, she whispered. I pushed off the counter and stood tall. No, you weren't afraid. You were selfish. Her face crumpled at that. I'm sorry. I'm sure you are. But that doesn't really fix it, does it? A long silence followed. Then she said, what now? And there it was. The real question. Not why, not how, but what next? I walked over to the table and picked up the flash drive. Held it up between my fingers like it weighed nothing, because it didn't. Not anymore. The damage had already been done. The evidence was just the echo. This, I said, was never going to be used in court. I'm not here to play the game of who gets what. She blinked. Then what's the point? The point, I said, was to watch you squirm. To let you feel for just a few days what I felt for months: uncertainty, paranoia, doubt. You thought I didn't notice the distance. I did. I just didn't want to believe it meant anything. She covered her face with both hands, breathing hard. So, that's it. You're leaving. I nodded. Yes. But Jack, we can fix this. We can try. I'll go to counseling. I'll cut it off with Griffin. I already did. I'm not interested in counseling, I said. I'm interested in self-respect. And you torched mine behind my back in a hotel room with a man who, by your own admission, means nothing to you. She stood up then, walked over to me, trembling. Please. We've been through too much. And now we've been through enough. I walked past her, upstairs to the bedroom. When I came back down, I had a duffel bag in my hand and my coat over my arm. You're not even going to fight for us? She asked, voice breaking. I stopped at the door. Looked her in the eyes. I did fight for us. Every time I forgave a weird excuse. Every time I chose to believe you instead of what was right in front of me. Every time I came home hoping things would change. I opened the door. You lost me before Griffin ever touched you. You just didn't notice. And then I stepped outside, into the cool morning air that felt like the first real breath I'd taken in months. I didn't look back. Because this was the part where I got to start over. And as for revenge, it wasn't just the leaving. It was leaving her with exactly what she thought she wanted. Until she realized what she lost. The first week away felt like surfacing from deep water. I checked into a short-term rental across town. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls, silence, and a coffee maker that worked half the time. But it was mine. Every corner of it. No lies living in the closets. No secrets sweating through the walls. The nights were quiet. Uncomfortably so at first. When you've spent years listening for someone's footsteps on the stairs or the drawer creaking open for a nightly moisturizer she never actually used, silence feels less like peace and more like withdrawal. But day by day, I adjusted. I focused on work. Read actual books again. Hit the gym with something bordering on a vengeance. It wasn't a revenge body thing. It was more about reclaiming space, mental and physical, that I hadn't realized I'd surrendered. Marcy sent texts. Long ones. Short ones. Some angry, some apologetic. I didn't reply to any of them. The real apology would have been faithfulness. One night, I received a message from an unknown number. I never meant to hurt you. Gee. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I blocked the number. I wasn't going to respond to the man who thought oops was a suitable follow-up to dismantling another man's marriage. He wasn't worth the calories it would take to form a thought. I could have let it in their quiet divorce, clean break. But Marcy made one last mistake. She tried to flip the script. Word got back to me through a mutual friend that she was rewriting the narrative. Telling people I'd been emotionally distant for years. That I'd checked out of the marriage long before she strayed. That maybe I pushed her into someone else's arms. That was the spark. You see, it's one thing to betray a man. It's another thing entirely to paint him as the villain while you hold the dripping brush. So I paid a visit to our lawyer. Brought along the flash drive. The messages. The hotel receipts. The screenshots. I didn't want her money. I wanted her reputation. You can have your dignity stolen once, but you're a fool if you don't take something back. 2 weeks later, she was served with divorce papers that included every detail she hoped would stay hidden. The filing wasn't private. I made sure of that. And because our state allows public disclosure if one party provides just cause, I gave just cause. Plenty of it. She tried calling me after that. 32 times in one night. I never answered. 6 months passed. I moved into a new place, something with more windows and fewer shadows. I got back in touch with people I hadn't seen in years. Turns out when you're not dragging the anchor of a toxic relationship, you're a hell of a lot lighter on your feet. One day, I ran into Emily. Yes, that Emily. The one Marcy used as her human alibi. She apologized before I could even speak. I didn't know, she said, eyes full of shame. I wouldn't have covered for her if I'd known what she was doing. I believe you, I said. And I did. Because if there's one gift betrayal gives you, it's a nose for lies. I started writing again, real writing, not just emails and spreadsheets. Stories, observations, bits of truth wrapped in fiction, all with one recurring theme: the cost of dishonesty and the quiet power of a man who refuses to break. One of those stories got picked up by a magazine. The editor called it stunningly stoic. I call it therapeutic. It was a crisp fall afternoon when I made my final move. Not dramatic, not even really visible to anyone else. I sent Marcy one last envelope. Inside it was a single photo, our wedding day. Smiling, young, deluded, and written on the back in my handwriting: "This version of us died the day you stopped telling the truth. Consider this the obituary." That was it. No threats, no insults, no parting shots. Just closure, cold, clean, and unmistakable. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's letting them burn themselves out in silence, while you walk away intact, stronger, smarter, done.